Karen Gillan is one of my favorite redheaded actresses and one of the best actresses out there working today. Whether you like her or haven't seen a lot of her work, she has made quite a bit of a resume for herself. So, in honor of her celebration of her birthday, I wanted to go over some of my favorite movies and shows with her. This is all my personal preference, so let's see how I go. I know this is recent, but I think Late Bloomers was one of her best performances from last year. It is definitely a very predictable film, but I think in terms of the way this movie is written and directed, I think there was enough in her to where I could overlook some of the predictability, even though it's there. I love the chemistry that she had with Margaret Sophie Stein and Jermaine Fowler and the rest of the cast. I also thought that this is one of her more emotional performances in terms of having to play a character that is kind of a late bloomer, but also she was able to make it pretty funny. One of her best dramatic efforts is definitely All Creatures Here Below. This movie was absolutely underrated in the year it came out. 2019, she was all over the place that year. Avengers, Jumanji, this movie, Inspires in the Skies. But this movie was actually a really damn good drama. That it is a bit of a hard watch, but I think it's a very effective watch, especially for her performance and David Dastmalchian's performance, who is just as great. Another one that's recent and one of my favorite movies of the year, and a movie that should have been seen by a lot more people, is The Life of Chuck. This was a beautiful story that tells the celebration of someone's life in reverse in different genres. But I think the way it comes together for me was a satisfying experience. And it was just one of those movies that tell you to appreciate your life and live your life to the fullest, even in tragedy. And while she's not in this movie as much as you want her to be, I thought she did a great job for the screen time she had. Everyone was great. Tom Hiddleston, Chiwetel Ejiofor, and Annalise Basso, Benjamin Pajak, Mark Hamill, Jacob Tremblay. It was a really beautiful story, and I really actually quite enjoyed it. One of her most underrated films is Not Another Happy Ending. It's not the greatest love story you'll ever see, but I think for a rom-com in 2013 with Scottish stereotypes such, I thought this was a beautiful little story. I like the relationship she has with Stanley Weber. Ian de Castecker and Freya Mayvor did a good job. It's a nice little film, and this was very sweet. I do think it's an underrated gem. Gunpowder Milkshake. Where the hell is the physical media release for this one? I know this is on Netflix, but we gotta do better with putting these movies on streaming services. This was ridiculous. It's stupid. It has its issues. I wanted more of some of the other supporting girls, but overall, I thought this is a pretty little decent film. There are moments where I kind of have to suspend my disbelief, but you know what? It doesn't get to the point of a Fast and Furious movie like Fast 9. But I did enjoy this. I don't know if we're gonna get more of this, but I think Karen and especially Chloe Coleman carried this movie, and I thought it was overall fun to watch. I'm a sucker for westerns, and this is one of my favorites, In the Valley of Violence. This movie is actually a really fun little western that is one of my favorites. You got Ethan Hawke, John Travolta, you got Taissa Farmiga, and Karen Gillan in the role. It's entertaining, it's brutal, it's badass, and it does have the usual trappings of a western, but you know what? It's makes up for it for having so much energy and so much heart. And I think in this, she really does shine. This was a movie that went underseen in 2022, and that's going to be Duel. While it does have its issues in terms of the ending, and some actors need more to do, I thought this was a little bit of a deadpan black comedy that was pretty interesting, and I like the story here of where Karen has to fight a clone version of herself after she thought she was going to pass on, but apparently some kind of treatment worked and she survives, and she has to fight her clone to the death. I thought it was an interesting little experience. This was one of the first things that kind of put her on the map next to another thing, which I'll get to, but I will say Oculus is probably my favorite Mike Flanagan film next to Joe's Game and The Life of Chuck. I think it's a very it's scary horror film that was creepy, it's effective. You do go back and forth to the past versions of them with Annalise Bazo and the actor playing the younger brother who's played by Brenton Thwaites. Katie Sackhoff is pretty unhinged here, and I just don't care for the ending of this movie. I won't spoil why, but overall, I think this was one of her best roles, and she should honestly do more horror when you give her a good script. She's not in this one very much, but I will say The Big Short is a great film, and with great acting and just a really good story based on real events. And Adam McKay did a very strong job here. I will say this is the best that they use Nebula in next to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, but she's very fantastic in Avengers Endgame. People love to hate this movie nowadays for no bullshit reason, and I just think it's unfair. Endgame is still awesome. Speaking of Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm gonna go with the first Guardians of the Galaxy. I think that she was fantastic for... This was the first movie I ever saw her in, and at the time I did not know who it was under all the makeup, but now that I've seen a lot of her filmography, I thought she's pretty great here. I want to see more of her. And she made the first impression as Nebula. Not in the first one as much as some of the sequels, but this is a great start. And thank goodness she didn't get killed off. Easily, this is another one of her finest hours as Nebula, as we get to see a transition of Nebula having to be the Gamora of things in this. And I thought for this last movie, she really had a fun time playing Nebula, and she's also pretty hilarious. This version of Nebula, it gets a little more humor this time around, and Karen just makes the character of Nebula iconic. After everything that she's gone through, she can feel like she's part of a family. Speaking of TV roles, this was a show that should have lasted longer than it should have, and that is going to be in the case of Selfie. Where's the physical media for this? Warner Brothers, Hulu, ABC, somebody get off your ass, give the rights to a physical media company and get it. Because her as Eliza Dooley, I thought she was fun. And she has some really spunky moments to her. She can be a little bit self-righteous with social media, but I thought her character was very funny and she's hilarious. And I liked her chemistry with John Cho. Another great TV performance for her. This was the one that put her on the map, and that's going to be Doctor Who. Doctor Who as Amy Pond. In my opinion, the best companion on Doctor Who. I haven't seen every era of Doctor Who. I've only went from David Tennant to Matt Smith. But this is her finest hour as Amy Pond. It is sad what happens to her happens, but you know what? She made one hell of a great debut in terms of acting for films and TV. Easily my favorite film with her as Nebula is Guardians 2. This you get to see a lot more of her, and you get to see a little bit of that sister bond with Gamora and Nebula. And honestly, this is just Nebula trying to give people a chance, even though she has been through all that hurt and trauma. But this is a good stepping stone. A movie that should be getting a lot more talked about and is in my 100 favorite movies of all time is The Party's Just Beginning. This shows that not only she can do drama very well along with the comedy, but she can also really write and direct very well. It has a few issues, but I think for her first directorial debut for a theatrical film, incredible, and should have not been overlooked. But easily the best role for me is obviously her as Ruby Roundhouse in Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle. This was the movie that had no right to be as funny as it was or as good as it was. I like it just as much as the original Jumanji film, but these sequels with The Rock and the crew stands out on their own. They're filming the last one right now, but when I saw her without the makeup in this Tomb Raider outfit, a lot of people like to criticize that outfit. I think it's pretty beautiful and it's a badass on her. But this was the moment where I was just in shock and seeing who was under all the makeup of Nebula the whole time. And it's a good performance. A few cringy moments with her, but you know what? It comes with the territory. And those are my favorite performances from Karen Gillan. What do you guys think? Tell me what are some of yours in the YouTube comments.